Welcome to Baxter Bell Yoga. Once again, I'm in my home studio. It's still COVID-19 lockdown, and thanks for joining me today. Just a couple of quick reminders. Remember, you can now take live streaming online classes with me from anywhere in the country or anywhere in the world, for that matter, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. So check out my website for my schedule. I also have some upcoming workshops that are going to happen also on covering some great topics. So that's also listed on my website. So check that out soon. You can also find a link to buy my book, Yoga for Healthy Aging, along with t-shirts at my website, right? There's a trend happening here. And finally, one thing that's not on my website is longer on-demand videos, which you can find from the website on the screen right now. Look for their practice channel, and I've got a lot of stuff stored there, and you can enjoy that from the comfort of your home anytime you want to take a class. All right, without further ado, let's see what our pose of the day is going to be. Today we're going to work on a variation of downward facing dog. Downward facing dog is almost ubiquitous in modern yoga classes. It is a modern yoga pose. It's not an ancient yoga posture. But be that as it may, it's still quite an interesting pose. It builds upper body strength. It lengthens the arms and shoulders and the spine. It can help to stretch the back of the legs, the myofascial tissues in the back of the legs. So there's some nice benefits of doing downward dog. It's a partial inversion, and you might want to take a look in Yoga for Healthy Aging, the book that I'm co-author of, to learn more about the benefits of partial inversions. So there's lots of good benefits to doing downward dog, but it's also kind of intense for some people on the hands and the wrists. And so it's nice to have alternatives to these modern poses when you need them. And some people even prefer the alternative to the original pose for whatever reason. So today we're going to work on forearm dog, forearm downward facing dog. And the interesting things about this is that you're going to have your weight resting on the forearms and the balls of your feet like you would for a down dog and the legs. And it's going to be much less impactful for the hands and wrists. We're basically taking the hands and wrists out of the formula. We'll do two different hand variations, one where the palms are in prayer position, and the other one where the fingers are interlaced with the bottom pinky tucked inside the hand. So I'll give you a couple different hand variations to do. The challenge of this pose is twofold. Number one, it puts more pressure on the skin on the outside of the forearm, which is not an area that's used to having pressure. So you have to be mindful to press the whole forearm down and not let all the weight drop into your elbows. Secondly, it tends to require a little more mobility in the shoulder joint in a different way than downward dog does. So for some people, they end up experiencing a feeling of more tightness or restrictions in the shoulders. So that's something you want to keep in mind as you play around with this particular posture. Okay? So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it a little bit. I'm going to recommend that you have a blanket for your knees to come back to and a nice sticky mat to work on. Some people will double up and make a double thick sticky mat to have a little extra cushioning for the forearms, just to make that a little bit easier. But let's go ahead and first of all, come to hands and knees like we would for down dog. I usually take my hands forward about one handprint. I'm going to demonstrate one regular down dog, and then we'll try the forearm version after that. So toes turned under, elbows strong, and then on an exhale, the knees lift up. You can always adjust the feet if you need to. And then you're pressing back with the hands towards the hips. You can have a little bend to the knees, or you can work on the legs being straighter. The heels can lift a little bit if that helps you to find the length in the spine and the legs. And of course, I'm feeling a lot of the work of my hands and wrists on the ground. And so for some people, that can present quite a challenge in doing the pose. Now, if I want to have kind of a similar effect, a similar angle for my arms, I'm probably going to want to bring my elbows pretty close to where my wrists are. So I'm going to lean out a little bit. Let's try hand variation number one, which is the easiest, just bringing the palms together in prayer position. I know there are people out there that like the forearms parallel. I find this is a little bit challenging for the shoulders and may actually not allow for the normal glenohumeral rotation that should be a healthy part of shoulder movement when the arms go overhead. So I'm a big fan now of bringing the hands together. So press the palms together, check to make sure your elbows are no further apart than shoulder distance apart. Press the whole forearm down, turn your toes under, and then lift up and back. So I'm not resting my head on the floor. I want to pull back strongly enough, pushing the forearm evenly down into the floor that I can get as much openness, safe, healthy openness in my shoulders as possible.
And my arms, my head ideally is in line with my arms right and left. I have my heels pretty lifted in this pose because if I drop down, my back tends to round a little bit. So whatever amount of lift to the heels is nice for your version of forearm dog is great. And then I've been up there for a couple breaths, so I'm going to come down for a moment. And then I'm going to go ahead and sit back towards my heels. And then I'm just going to give a little love to my forearms. Because again, there's a lot of pressure there. It's not a very common place for the forearms to be on the ground typically. So it's nice just to give a little gentle rub to that area. So the next variation for the hands is going to involve the interlace of the fingers. But if I keep my outside pinky where it is, it tends to create a little uneven spot. So I like to tuck that inside the hands like we do for headstand, for those of you still doing headstand. And otherwise, everything else is the same. But you may find that you like this because it's maybe a little more stable for the hands. So let's give that a try. I'm going to put my hands where they would be for down dog. I'm going to lean a little forward, place my elbows where my wrists just were, interlace the fingers, tuck the bottom pinky inside the hands, check the distance of the elbows, make sure they're not too wide apart, press the whole forearm down, turn the toes under, and then float up and back into your forearm dog. Pressing firmly down with the forearms, drawing up and back with the sitting bones. Again, the knees can be a little bit bent or the legs can be straighter. So all the things you would normally play with in down dog in terms of the lower extremities, you can work on very nicely here. And then on an inhale, we'll let the knees lightly come back to the blanket. And then let's again walk back for a moment into a little Vajrasana, thunderbolt position. And then just give a little love to the forearms. Nice little rub. So that is forearm dog for your practice this week. Try that out, see what you think if you don't do it normally. Hopefully you've got a little more information that makes it a little more accessible to you. And of course, be mindful of the variations that I mentioned and really listening to the shoulders and the forearms and making sure that they can handle this alternative to regular downward dog. And if they can, then this is a great thing to have in your yoga back pocket when the time comes or whenever you want to try it as an alternative to regular downward facing dog. All right, and don't forget to follow me on Facebook and YouTube at Baxter Bell Yoga. I hope to see you in a live streaming yoga class sometime soon. Thank you so much for joining me today. Namaste.